All right. Okay, meet these two. And they're two special speakers. You know why? Because they're both graduates of our program. So it's kind of cool to see people that are out there working that are successful coming back. The gentleman over here is Robert Harlander Locke. You want to be called Bob? Or
sure.
Would you prefer? He's a graduate of our program. And then Kelsey Kuhn, who is also a graduate of our program not too many years ago.
I graduated in
2012. Yeah, a long time before that. I'll let him volunteer that if you want.
That's all I'm saying.
So, Bob is currently an internship supervisor for a second-year student that we have in Rwanda, and he specializes in working in the work comp area for the state of Minnesota Department of Labor and Industry. So they're here to offer you another option that you might consider. They're already, I was telling Bob, they're already confused as to all the things that they can do, so they'll just add another dimension. Okay, I'll let you take it away.
As the slide says, we're with the Vocational Rehab Unit, Department of Labor and Industry. Kelsey started there about a year ago. 2 years? January, yep. And I've been there since 1983.
Wow.
Yeah, long time. We're going to be talking about the term QRCs, is what we are. That means Qualified Rehabilitation Consultant. In order to provide services to injured workers in Minnesota, you do have to go through a process, and I'll be explaining that a little bit in the PowerPoint. We're State of Minnesota agency, part of the Department of Labor and Industry. We're funded through a program called the Special Compensation Fund, which is partially, if not majorly, funded from insurance companies. We have 6 offices throughout Minnesota. The main office is in St. Paul. We have a larger office in St. Cloud here. We also have one-person offices in Bemidji, Duluth, Mankato, and Rochester. So 10 QRCs total. We have 6 placement staff who cover the whole state of Minnesota. 3 are placement coordinators, and 3 are support staff technicians. We work with people who have been hurt on the job. And in a minute, I'm going to give you a little profile of who we work with and what kind of injuries. They're all work-related, and I tell you, we work with people of all occupations, from store clerks to over-the-road truck drivers to loggers, many people who work as CNAs, LPNs, construction workers, you name it, we've probably had a client from that area. We work with people primarily whose claims have been denied. We were set up back in 1983 to serve that population where the insurance company did not pick up the claim and where they are not providing any workers' compensation benefits. So we work, because of that, with people who have been out of work for a longer length of time, who are financially strapped, because they're not receiving benefits, who can be somewhat bitter because the insurance company has not picked up the claim. But we also work partially with people whose claims have been accepted, but primarily with denial cases. Our goal, and whoever we are working with, is return to work. It's either return to work with the date of injury employer, same job or different job, or if that's not possible, with a different employer in either the same job career area or in a different career, depending on the nature of the injury and the person's qualifications. Can you see this very well on there? Yeah. The lower right-hand corner talks about the parts of the bodies that we see most commonly. And these are 2014 stats. Head and neck injuries, 7% of the claims. 11% shoulder problems, 19% back injuries, 23% arms and hands, 7% trunk, 11% knees, 12%, legs and feet, and then multiple body parts, 10%. So it's head to toe. And each injury presents its own set of limitations, issues.
I'm sorry, Bob, what was the number one that you said? The most?
The highest one is arms and hands, extremities, upper extremities. That's significant because about 85% of all jobs commonly held require use of the arms and hands. These stats go on to say that we work 63% with men, 24% older than 54, so you've got the age factor in there. 10% were younger than 25 years old, so typically those folks would have a more limited work history. 31% were at their job for less than 1 year. Nature of injuries, strains, sprains, and tears, that's about half of them. Pain-related, contusions, fractures, open wounds. And the bottom source of injury is structures and surfaces, which can be slips and falls. That would be the major one there. Other ones pertain to the injured worker, just sustaining a work injury because they lifted wrong, twisted, bent, something went wrong. Other things pertain to malfunctions in equipment around them. Sometimes there's other employees who cause injuries, like in a warehouse inventory place. Somebody not safely driving a forklift, they turn the corner and wham, hit somebody. So that's kind of a quick profile of the nature of the work injuries in Minnesota. We get referrals of injured workers from attorneys and from insurance companies. We don't get as many from insurance companies because we work with denial cases, and in most cases, our services are not paid for. In the case where the insurer has picked up the claim, we will get referrals directly from insurance carriers. So we get a referral from an attorney's office, we get a referral from an injured worker. We set up an initial evaluation, it's called initial consultation. We meet for about an hour and a half and we gather tons of information about their injury, their medical treatment, additional secondary things that might be wrong with them, get an idea of where treatment is headed, and also what their current work restrictions are. At that point, we call the date of injury employer to see if they are able to return the individual to work, either in their old job, if they're released to perform that, or in a modified or light duty position. For denial cases, probably 98% of the time, that doesn't work out. And what we then do is develop what's called a rehabilitation plan, generate a report 3 to 4 pages long that covers all aspects of what is going on with the individual medically, vocationally, educationally. And then in that process, we usually develop ideas of what you need to do in order to get that individual back to work. And then services, and they're usually placement services are initiated. And job search continues until one of two things happens, that the individual either settles their claim with the insurance carrier, or they go back to work and we follow up with them for a month, and if it's all successful, we then close our file. So that's kind of a nutshell view of what we do. Okay, I just noticed on my list here, medical management. We often go to doctor's appointments to talk with the physician about, directions of treatment, any questions we have about what the prognosis is for the next 3 to 6 months, so we can do our vocational planning. We can work with employers, go into a job site, take a look at the duties. Are they within the restrictions? Does anything need to be modified? And then if we need to take that information to the doctor to get their approval, we can do that too. We do vocational counseling, we can do testing, any assessment that we think needs to be done, referral to job placement like I had mentioned. We also can do what are called retraining evaluations. Retraining in the work comp system is kind of hard to come by. What are the stats? Like half of 1% of clients ever get retrained, I think. It's a very costly process, and it's pretty involved for a QRC to go through the whole process. So it's not real common, but it is on the table of services. The other thing that we do, and luckily it's not as much as it used to be 10, 20 years ago, is courtroom testimony. The workers' comp system, because we work with denial cases, it is full of litigation. And very often, well, no, not very often, it's kind of changing right now, but we may be required to go to court to talk about our involvement with the individual, to get grilled by the defense attorney, cross-examined by the plaintiff attorney. And so that's kind of an interesting component of the job. Thrills some people to be part of that system, scares the heck out of other people. Brad and I were just talking, the more you do it, the better you get. So you're not as scared as time goes on.
I have a question in that regard.
Yes.
Would you say then, if a situation like that occurred, would you say you're a neutral party, or are you there to support the person?
Good question.
Yeah.
We are mandated by law to be neutral and objective.
Okay.
Okay? We have a set of rehabilitation rules that are quite lengthy. They're very specific. The workers' comp law is pretty long, pretty complex, and the rules are developed to implement the law. It's very picky, and working as a QRC is a very regulated business, which is going to sound weird if you're in this profession to help people. Because we are mandated to be neutral, we do help people get back to work, but we cannot advocate. We do not listen to an insurance carrier telling us we want you to do this and this and this. We do not listen to a plaintiff or defense attorney saying, I want you to do this, I want you to do that. We are focused in what we need to do to get the person back to work and to follow the rehabilitation plan we've developed. So we avoid that hassle, and we're really not laid into by other parties very much overall. It happens on occasion, but a good question.
Thank you.
Probably a number of you know about the other rehabilitation services program that is run by, we were trying to remember what D was this morning, but I know I wrote it down. Department of Employment and Economic Development. And that is the agency that runs the Workforce Center. And those Division of Rehab Services offices are located within those workforce centers. We deal in our work only with people who have been hurt on the job. They deal with any other disability, to put it in general terms, other than workers' compensation injuries. We very rarely have a case that we will work with DEED on, but it's very, very few and far between. And so that's a major difference between that rehab services program and us. And Kelsey, because she is coming from the private sector, will tell you about the differences between us and the private sector.
Okay, so the VRU QRCs and the private sector QRCs abide by the same rules. We do the same job. However, when you're in the private sector, you may have additional responsibilities because you don't have the support staff like we do. We have replacement coordinators, we have clerical, we have someone that does our billing and interventions and things like that. You may take on more of those roles because you don't have all those people. You also can act as a vocational expert. You can do independent vocational evaluations, and that would be, you would be an outside party to either a Social Security disability case or I don't know if they're, maybe,
Divorce
maybe
cases.
divorce cases where you come in and you evaluate, is this person employable? What is their earning capacity so that they can determine what benefits should be given? So that's another option that you'd have in the private sector that we don't do at the VRU. One other difference is that typically in the private sector, you're going to have a billable hourly requirement, maybe by week or something like that. You are required to bill 35 hours. We don't have that in the VRU, and I see that as kind of a benefit sometimes because if nothing's going on with your clients that week, it's kind of hard to make up hours. You can't, you don't just bill for doing nothing. So that's a stress relief, I think.
Yeah.
Excuse me, Kelsey, can I interrupt a second?
Yes.
And you came out of that other setting, right?
Yes.
Because you, I don't know if you mentioned that, you came out of the private sector and now came into the public sector, so you've
Correct.
seen both.
Yes, so I started in the private sector in a very small firm that only had one QRC prior to myself and one other QRC joining. There are bigger private QRC firms, Corvell, Alaris, that are giant companies that have private QRCs, Stubby. And I went in briefly into self-employment with a partner, and so you all of a sudden adapt all those responsibilities of overseeing everything and making sure bills are being paid and things like that.
Okay, the next slide. Okay. I've already explained that QRC is a qualified rehab consultant. We provide, like I was saying, medical management services, vocational counseling, return to work assistance to injured workers. Neutral party, as Rachel had asked, and we do our job within the rehab rules and the Minnesota Workers' Comp statutes, the law. In order to qualify for this job, you have to be CRC certified, and you have to keep up that certification by getting 100 hours per 5 years of continuing education. You also are required to work for the first year or 2,770 hours under a certified QRC, and you're called a QRC intern during that time. And then in order to move to be a regular QRC, you have to submit examples of your work in all different phases of workers' comp claims. It's reviewed, approved, and St. Paul, and you can scratch that intern description off your name after that point and work independently without having a supervisor.
Can I ask a question about
Yes.
that? So we haven't talked about that in our program yet. That is actually a license, and that's actually a license that allows you to bill third-party reimbursers for, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So once you get that license, you can then bill an insurance company for your services, if you're lucky enough to have a caseload or a company to work with. Right. So in addition to like the LPCC, it's a very similar thing, only specifically in the work comp area.
Right. Well, Kelsey is going to talk about other stuff.
Okay, a typical QRCs. Bob had talked about some of the appointments we go to. We meet with the client, we may meet with an employer, we will go to doctor's appointments. We have also a lot of office time and a lot of paperwork, vocational planning, communicating on the phone and email with employers, attorneys, insurance adjusters, all of the parties involved. Provide support to the client. A lot of times they need that. They're in a difficult situation. They don't know what to do. Their employer wants them to do this, but they don't feel it's within their work restrictions. So that's kind of where we would come in. And a lot of report writing and documentation, and that is in our rules by law. We have to do case notes and specific reports every so often throughout the file. We have a lead QRC at the VRU. We have one lead in St. Paul and one lead in St. Cloud, and Bob is our lead. Bob's been a lead for 12 or 13 years. So he has additional roles. He holds monthly staff meetings where we can discuss files or topics that are relevant at the time. And he's just a great resource for everyone on his team to go and ask and have someone to ask questions to.
I've been there
Anything
so
else?
long.
The placement coordinator